Hello, everyone. This is Erica from Green Apple Books speaking. I'm sorry that we are having some technical difficulties with our camera, so you'll only be hearing my voice tonight. Before we get started with our event tonight with Michaeleen Doucleff and Meghan Leahy, am I saying your names right?
It's Michaeleen, but it's okay.
Oh,
I
okay.
respond to Michaeleen.
Okay. Michaeleen Doucleff and Meghan Leahy. Tomorrow we will be having an event for the Bay Area Book Festival, and as a part of their Women Lit #Unbound series, we're having an event called Following the Joy. And that event will feature Laraya Gaston and Janae Darden discussing Laraya's new book, Love Without Reason. Each ticket comes with a copy of the book from Green Apple. It's a really great series for Women's History Month and women literature. Book tickets, I believe, are about $30. You can get those at the Bay Area Book Festival's website. And if you tune in this Thursday, you can see Kazim Ali and Layli Long Soldier discussing Kazim's new memoir, Northern Light, Power, Land, and the Memory of Water. And tonight we have Meghan Leahy. Meghan Leahy is the mother of 3 daughters. She practices Zen Buddhism, holds a bachelor's degree in English and secondary education, and a master's degree in school counseling. And she's a certified parent coach and Newfield Institute facilitator, as well as the on-parenting columnist at the Washington Post. Leahy lives with her family outside Washington, D.C. She is the author of the recently released book, Parenting Outside the Lines: Tap into Your Wisdom and Connect with Your Child. Michaeleen Doucleff is the author of the book Hunt, Gather, Parent, and of course, the reason we are here tonight. The book describes an ancient way of raising children that traces back to our ancestors. It also explains how American families can incorporate this approach into their busy lives. She is also a global health correspondent for NPR's Science Desk, where she repeats for the radio and web about disease outbreaks and children's health. As a science journalist, Doucleff has reported on a broad range of topics from vaccination fears on the microbiome to beer biophysics and dog psychology. She lives in San Francisco with her husband, daughter, and their German Shepherd dog, Savannah. And with that, I'll pass it on to you. Have a good show.
Hello, hello, hello. Let me see this girl. This is like the girl of the hour.
Here, let me I have on the earbuds. Okay, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yes. This is Rosie.
Rosie has makeup on her face, which Michaeleen told me, so never fear. And Rosie is the true star. So a couple of reasons why we're here. Number one, when your team reached out to me, I was like, I read that Intuit thing that you wrote a couple years ago. And I was like, yes, right. And so when it came back around again, I was like, yes, I'll take that book. Yes, I will read that book. And when you asked me to do that, I'm like, yes. So I have it right here, highlighted to the bejesus. Before we begin, give everyone a broad, tell everyone why you wrote the book, which is the number one question, right? Why would you write this book when there is 150,000 books on every topic known to parenting? And just start there.
Yeah. Okay, my internet is a little wobbly, but I think I wrote this book because none of the books that I had read were working at all. And I realized very quickly that a lot of the stuff in the books is just kind of wrong and often not only ineffective, but kind of makes things worse. All right. Hang on a second. And what I found while I was reporting at NPR was when I would travel places, I actually found that parents were doing something really different. A lot of parents were doing a totally different way of relating to children. And it just looked like it was more effective and easier. And I was like, well, I want to learn that. And then I tried to read about it in books and I couldn't find it. And so I was like, okay, I didn't want to write a parenting book, Megan, to be honest with you, because I don't think, I was a very good parent. But when I saw what was happening in the Yucatan and in the Arctic, I was like, well, I want to learn this. I want to relate to my child in this way. And so the book kind of came to me in a lot of ways.
I hear you. And just so if for everyone who hasn't yet read the book, Michaeleen is brutally honest with her own parenting. She's probably maybe harder on herself than she was in actuality. But that's all to say that the relatability, if you are struggling with your kids, if you're fighting with them, if you are arguing with them, the power struggles, nonstop power struggles, the dynamics of those struggles, she takes the wisdom of these cultures that have been doing it forever, and may, when you read, seem like, how could I do that? She takes it and crystallizes it for us in our westernized world, right? So to begin, you start with an acronym that you follow throughout the book, TEAM, right? So break that down for everybody.
Yeah, so I kind of came up with it so I could remember kind of these 4 core elements that I saw and that I think exist in many, many, many cultures around the world. So we're actually executing the T in TEAM right now. We're doing this together. So that's
hang this up, Mama.
all right. Go hang it up. Go hang it up in the somewhere else. T is for together. This idea that we are constantly trying to like force children to do things by themselves. Is kind of goes against their like innate biology to work together, especially work together with people that they love and who love them. And I should say together doesn't mean the mom and the dad. In fact, in many, many places, the mom and the dad play a much smaller role in children's lives than they do here in the US. So it's a grandma, grandpa, neighbor, friend, basically anyone who loves the child. Then E is for encourage. So instead of forcing things on children and forcing children to do things, which creates resistance and the power struggles that we talk about, in the book, you'll find a whole like tool set to encourage children and get children to figure out for themselves the proper behavior. I think that one's the hardest because I was raised with like, you do what your parents say or else. And so that's like my knee-jerk reaction to things. A is for autonomy, which is hugely important. So this is the idea that from moment to moment, children make their own decisions as long as they're being respectful, kind, generous, and helpful. So there's this freedom, but they're always looking in ways inward to help family members, help their friends. So it's an interesting combination. It's like cooperative independence kind of. And then finally, M is minimal interference. So this idea that you're not throwing your hands up and being like, oh, the kids do whatever, free range. And you're not micromanaging either. You're letting the child go about, make their own decisions, do what they can, but you're watching to make sure they're safe, to see if there's any ways you can help them. And you interfere like as little as possible. So the child basically feels like they're doing it on their own until they like really, really need you.
And I can hear parents right now, like collectively, like, right? So here's what I got excited about as like a parenting nerd, right? Because when I saw it, the westernized way of thinking is very binary, right? So it's black and white. I'm doing this or I'm doing that, right? And the reason what I found that you honed in on with these cultures of long-standing, successful parenting, right? Peaceful, direct, kind, forward-looking, cooperative, all the traits that we supposedly want in our kids. The American culture is especially obsessed with independence, right? Which is, I don't need anyone else, which flies in the face of how humans are together and what we need, right? So the beautiful thing about TEAM is that togetherness and autonomy are part of the same path. They're on the thing. They're not in opposition, right?
Yeah, that's really insightful. Yeah, exactly. They seem kind of like opposites,
Yes.
but they coexist together. And I think that's through like the minimal interference and encouragement, right? It's like because when I talk about together, it's not like me stimulating Rosie, me talking to her or her talking to me. It's us kind of coexisting together and me responding to her if she needs. So you're right. Like this. So you're right. That's like a very interesting dichotomy. All right, raise a boo. We're like this. Rosie boo. You're gonna need to be quiet if you stay in the room. Otherwise, you need to leave. And we're doing this. There. She's welcome to stay, but she needs to play by the rules in this room. We'll see how it goes, though. This is like parenting in action from the book.
Well, so, similar to you, I, had my first child. I have a 17, almost 14 and 10-year-old. And I had my first child. I was an amazing baby mom. I read all the signals. It was great. Yeah, it was kind of hard, but I was like, I can do this. And then around 2 are when the fights start, right? And developmentally, there's nothing wrong, right? So there's some individuation happening. You talk about an interior motor in children, that they are driven to be helpful, to be involved, to want to be a part of, and to have some autonomy. And in the West, in our culture, we call that disrespect, disobedience, right? We think it is a behavior problem, when in fact, it's not only not a problem, it's good. So tell me how the Maya people handle children doing their own thing, and like tell the story from the book, if you can, really quickly, about getting them to school, which, by the way, I'm a parent coach and people call me about getting off to school when we did that and going to bed, right? So what happens in these families that's different from ours in America?
Yeah. So I spent this lovely family when Juanita and her family, she has 4 kids. She welcomed me into her home in the morning, watch her morning routine, right? They have to get ready to school just like we do. They have to be at the gate stop. And we went, and it all took about 20 minutes from the time they woke up until like they were out the door. 20 minutes for 4 kids, yeah, age 6 to 16. And it was so quiet in the house that I recorded it for the radio that you could literally hear the birds like chirping through parts of it, because there was absolutely no yelling. So Juanita, the 11-year-old Ernesto, started off, and Juanita said, "Go find your shoes." And she said it basically, I'm over like emoting. It's like, go find your shoes. Like, it's just boom, go find your shoes. And he just ran out and he didn't respond to her, and she just left it alone. And then she like turned to the 16-year-old and said, basically, wake up your sister and help her get dressed. And the 16-year-old goes, wakes up the sister, brushes her hair very gently, helps her get dressed, and then very gently, it's the like sweetest thing I've ever seen, washes the little girl's feet so that she can put her shoes on. I mean, it was just like incredible. And I said something to Anita, like, are they behaving so well because I'm here? And she said, well, the oldest one, Laura, would be a little rougher if you weren't here, but she just was like, and then she says, it's time to eat breakfast, and they come over and they eat breakfast, and then Ernesto still hadn't found his shoes, and he was back in, and she just said to him again, like, go find your shoes. And this was like a 5 or 10 minute pause between she asked again. And I think it ended up being 3 times, and then he finally got his shoes. She never escalated it. It was always just, go find your shoes. Go find your shoes, and literally like 5-10 minute breaks. And then she kind of gave a signal, and they all went outside, and a 16-year-old took them on the bike to school. And that was, and that was it. It was absolutely incredible to me, because I have one, and it was like mayhem before, no one went. And so yeah, just watching it, I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, Juanita has clearly like created a team, right? They like, not only are they respectful to her, but they're helping each other, right? And it was like this cohesive thing going on. And I was like, what have I created? I've created like this contrarian anarchist who is like against me. And it really made me start to think about what what Rosie's purpose is in our family. So the Maya have a saying, you gotta be quiet, Libby. The Maya have a saying that every being has a purpose, including these little ones. And I was like, well, what is Rosie's purpose? You know, is it to go play? Is it to watch cartoons? Like, and it really made me start to reconsider how she spends her time with me when she's not at preschool or whatever. And it really shifted what we did, because I started realizing that if I wanted to put her on my team, then I needed to treat her like a teammate instead of like this VIP that gets all these special activities, special food, special everything, right? I had to give her like a membership card into our family by welcoming her in and treating her like a teammate.
So I was thinking, I live next to my mother-in-law and my father-in-law. He passed a number of years ago, and they are from Serbia. And so I've had a first-hand account at seeing another culture with my kids. And as soon as, so number one, everyone sits at the dining room table, right? There's no like separate place for the kids. There's no separate meal, right? As soon as a child is able, they sit at the table, and they are given china and real forks and knives, and they eat what we eat. There is no other meal. So the fish comes out with the head on, the eyeballs in, the scales on, like no nuggets, right?
Right.
And all my kids eat it. Yeah. All my kids drink the tea. Nobody, and there would be like at one point there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little kids under 10, you know, and nobody broke a thing. Everyone sat. Everyone ate. Because it was
possible.
Right. It was the expectation, and it was also the joy of of my mother-in-law. Right. So the joy was reciprocating. Like, this makes me happy you do this. They like, and it was just all, this is how we do. And because nobody had offered a different way to be on the team, the kids were like, okay. Whereas sometimes we go back to my house and they'd be like, I want a grilled cheese. She wants the nuggets. We're, you know, so, and people are so
right. That's so interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
You know, it's interesting. One of the sorry, I missed you.
No, it's okay.
You guys hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I was just going to say, one of the anthropologists, psychologists, between places that are for kids and where they can act kind of immaturely, and places where they're like expected to and welcomed in like the adult world. And that's like a perfect example, right? You treat the child like a full-fledged family member, and they act like one. They act like one, right? Yes. You treat the child more like a special child or childlike, then the child acts more like a child. And this is what I think is, and also your mother-in-law is giving those kids practice at that, right? By welcoming them the whole time, they're practicing those skills, using the china, using the knives. You know, if we never give children these opportunities, they can't learn. They can't learn to behave like an adult, right? Because it really is about practice. That's so interesting.
And I was thinking of your book too, because you highlight in a number of chapters and say it both squarely and through different ways that we talk to our kids non-stop. Okay.
Yes.
And I have coached people. I'm like, if your kid could, they would file suit for harassment, right? the way you're just so, right. And I'm not even slamming them, because one time I band-aided my mouth shut for 1 week straight. So I would stop saying my middle child's name, because I had made her deaf. Right? So what? Really? Yeah. And I had to prove to myself that I could get 3 kids out the door without speaking. And guess what? I did. Right? They knew what to do. So what?
Wow, that's amazing. That's like.
I mean, not really. Apparently, I'm just doing what these other cultures have been doing forever. So how do these other cultures use other forms of language to communicate with their kids, like body language, facial expressions? How do they use silence and these in-between moments?
Oh, it's so great. Like, so one of the things is like looks, right? And I think is every culture, like the mom and the dads, right? Or like, you know, instead of saying no to a child or trying to, you can't fight with a face. Like you can't negotiate with the face, you know? And it's like 10 times more powerful than saying no, or Rosie, don't do that. You know, I'll just like, she'll pick up the candy bar at the grocery store and I'll just be like, and she'll just drop it, like, you know, versus like, they just know. And like, even when the Inuit moms were crazy, they could just like, they would tell me they could just communicate with like a little tiny eyebrow or just like a little wrinkle of the nose. Like it's just very subtle. And, you know, kids know what you're thinking. You don't need to like hit them over the head with like words all the time. The other great one is touch. So like it can be a really, really gentle, calming. So even like the other day, Rosie was screaming in the back seat about something, and I just reached back and touched her leg and kind of just, you know, pressed it just like a tiny bit, and she completely just stopped. It was just like all she needed was like some type of connection to me. And then the other form, which my husband has fallen in love with recently, is like a big physical, like high energy touch. So if a child is misbehaving and you want to try to diffuse like some anger, one of the moms in the book just picked up the little boy and kind of flipped him over and then flew him like an airplane, and it like just snapped away all of this like angst that he was carrying. Sometimes I'll take Rosie and I'll tickle her. In the Maya village, the kids were obsessed with tickling her. Everywhere they went, every time she misbehaved, they tickled her. And I wasn't sure if she liked it because she would scream and stuff, but I asked her and she was like, I love it, mama. So it's this idea of like diffusing anger through not words, because words are so stimulating to a child, and little ones don't even understand what you're saying, you know?
Well, and I found that parents are bringing a logical gun to emotional knife fight.
That
right?
is
So
exactly right.
The child is having an emotional issue, and we're saying, well, I told you only one cookie, or I told you in 2 hours, when the kid's like, what the hell is 2 hours? Like, we keep saying the same thing over and over louder, like how rude people are to the hard of hearing, and think that that'll, you know, so we're upping energetically.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, so what you're talking about, Michaeleen, is on page 172, right? And it's in the tools section around anger, the cycle of anger. And you say to parent with touch or toss, physicality. And the reason that this is a great chapter, because I'm going to tell everybody right now, is that it's not one way. So in the Neufeld approach, which is a developmental attachment approach, you can make this what your kid needs. So we call it in our approach increasing proximity, right? Coming together. So some kid knee to knee on the couch might be enough, right? You're increasing proximity, right? A gentle touch, a nice face, a smile, right? And some kids tactile need to be thrown around, because as humans, that's kind of what we did for a long time. We threw ourselves around. We took chances. Kids jumped, right? And roughhousing has been like shown to really be a wonderful way to bond and release energy, right?
Yeah, tension release. Woo.
Right. Yeah. So the beautiful thing about all of your tools, right? Because somebody's like, well, I can't pick up my kid because they'll flip out. Great, don't pick up your kid. Like, find another way to touch them or be near them to lower the temperature, right? So good.
Yeah. I mean, even just coming at the child with this like you've got, so what I saw, one of the Inuit moms, Elizabeth, was like, Rosie was getting ready to have a tantrum in a grocery store, and I was doing exactly what you're saying. I was like, we can't buy another headband. We don't need another headband. I bought you another headband. And she just came over to her with like the calmest energy I've ever seen. Like, I can't even do it. It's like, she's like, Rosie, and she like pointed to something. And it was even calm. I mean, it is so calm, like the energy. And was just like, Rosie, what's that book right there? Like she just like, and Rosie just like stopped. It was incredible. Rosie just stopped. Like she was so brought down by this other person's energy. Like her energy just matched this other person's energy. And that's when I realized like, oh, she's just matching my high energy and it's just making things worse. And
Right.
so I call
And
like parenting with energy.
yeah,
That's
and
all
the
you
only
need.
people
It's
we're
just
in charge of are ourselves, right? So, and there's this saying, there's numerous stories in, my puppy is moving her ear around. She has an ear infection. There's these sayings, I believe it was an Inuit culture of like, that there is great shame around acting like a child. And that
Yes.
this is considered like a really like lowbrow way of being. And I was thinking about that because when that woman spoke to Rosie in the grocery store, it was not an act of manipulation, which kids are like, bling, 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 right? So,
Right.
and then I'll go into a question about the book. So the number one people that hire me have become positive parents. So what they do is, I call it pendulum swinging. So they go from yelling, right, and just do this, do that, shut up, don't do this, blah, 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 to when you hit me, I feel sad because, right?
Right.
So in both cases, shush, they don't have any power, like true power. Whereas, does that make sense?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Like the kid is still leading the dynamic in some ways.
Yes.
Right. So there's a cycle of anger and blah, 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 blah. And over here it's, I'm gonna make this kid understand how I feel as well as take care of my feelings, which is like a psychological what, right? And whereas these cultures literally have within them a complete different understanding of children's role in the world. So tell us about the culture that, I believe it's still the Inuits, but they all have a little bit of this, including the last culture in the middle of Africa, right?
Yes, in Tanzania.
The child's purpose is to make mistakes and grow.
That's right. This is huge. So like, I came at like, because I was having a hard time with Rosie hitting me, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I said, oh, she's pushing my buttons, she's manipulating me. And one of the moms actually laughed at me and was like, she's not manipulating you. She's like 2, she's 3. She doesn't know how to manipulate. She's just this like irrational, illogical being who doesn't know the rules yet. And so it's your job to show her through your own behavior or through, like I talk about consequences, all these, there's lots of tools you can use, what the proper behavior is. And if you sit there and yell at her or argue with her or negotiate, all you're teaching her is to argue and to yell and to negotiate. And like you said, it's just like stooping to the child's level. If you're arguing, they never argue with children. Like in many cultures, parents just do not argue with children. They just walk away. And this has been actually one of the biggest changes in our lives is I've just stopped arguing with Rosie. Like when it starts to come on, I will like touch her shoulder and be like, I'm not arguing with you. And I walk away. And she knows whatever she's doing is wrong. I don't need to sit there and tell her about it or negotiate. But so this reminds me of a story when Rosie knocked over a cup of coffee across the floor onto this rug.
Is an amazing section. Yeah.
It's an amazing story. And there are like 3 or 4 adults in the room. And I look and there's coffee all over the table in this white rug. And I look up and first of all, nobody has flinched. Somebody's like on their phone, somebody's reading a book, like nobody even looked up. Sally, the mom, comes over and starts to clean it. And I'm like, oh gosh, Sally, I'm so sorry. And I wanted to scream like, Rosie, we're in their house. And Sally looks over to her son, who's in his 20s, and son, and she says, your coffee was in the wrong location. And I was just like, what? Like she's not blaming Rosie. She expects Rosie to knock something over. And it's the adult's responsibility to make the environment in a way that prevents these things. And it really, like, for one, it showed me how like over responsive we are to things, you know, that when we're like, oh my God, you spilled something. Like all we're teaching our children to do is to be like, oh my God, you spilled something. But also, it showed me how she expects the kids to misbehave. So instead of blaming the kids, she blamed kind of the adult. It was very, very interesting moment.
Well, I was
I will say,
yeah,
I think this helps, this idea of expecting children to be misbehave and make mistakes helped me so much have less anger towards Rosie. It was like,
it's so
because
yeah.
Because it was like, instead of me being like, why did you do this? What are you doing? It's like, oh, of course you did that. Let me try to help you. And that broke that anger cycle that you were talking about. Whereas I get angry at her, she gets angry back, and we just are like in this horrible, horrible
cycle. I'm teaching my 17-year-old to drive, and she was on a very busy road a couple of days ago. And I don't think that she's not driving a fancy car that's like bleep, 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 like somebody's here, somebody's there. It's like old school, right? 2010, just basic, right? And I didn't think she was turning her head enough to really check her blind spots. So she was moving to the left, and she looked at her mirror, and she moved over and completely cut off this big truck, right? And he was like, and I was, and we have the sticker on the car, right? And like student driver. And very quickly, I was like, if I shame her, I'm taking away the natural consequence of that feeling.
Interesting.
And instead, she was like, Mom, we came to a light, and she's like, and I was like, well, now you'll always check your blind spot. Everybody does it.
Yeah, that's
right. Everybody cuts somebody off. I've been driving 150 years. I cut people off. Just keep going. It's why we have the stickers on your car. People will forgive you. But I could have ruined it if I went with my, like, what's wrong with you? I know you haven't been turning your head enough. Are you trying to kill us? Blah, 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 blah. Right?
Right.
And instead it was like,
that's so powerful.
Yeah, but I had all the same feelings that every parent has, which is fear and then anger, right? So I'm like, and instead of, I went, we're okay. I mean, I went home and poured myself a glass of wine, but I was like, okay. But I was really thinking of your book because, of course she's going to make mistakes driving.
Yeah, right.
Like,
and you stayed on her team, right? You stayed on her team. You didn't turn yourself into the enemy, right? Right? Like, that's what's really beautiful about that. You're like, yeah, that happens.
Yes.
Life, like Maria says, life teaches you. Life teaches you. You don't need the parent to teach every moment, right?
So I think, what's interesting about your book is, and I don't feel like I wrote about it enough in my book, is what we just discussed, which is this fundamental need to understand them differently. And that I have a lot of empathy for American parents because we don't have a monoculture. We're from everywhere in America. Right. We have lost our ancestry. Many, especially white people, right? Yeah. We have lost our ancestral stories. I'm Irish. I was reading the Celtic stuff. I don't know any of that stuff, right? That wasn't, I know, right? That didn't come over with me, right? Yeah. We lost the things we've been through, the good, the bad, right? And so I was thinking of your book and this, like, we can still reclaim it, or do you feel like it's too late for Americans?
No. I mean, no.
Are we screwed?
No, we are not screwed. I mean, I think the thing for me was how, you just can even add a little bit and it can make a huge difference, like just a little more togetherness, a little less like anger of, I am by no means perfect with the anger, but decreasing it, the amount I have has been so amazing for our relationship. And so I say, just start small and you'll, like you say, like just, and then see how it works. If the kid responds to it, keep going. If not, try something else. But it is not too late. In fact, I use most of the techniques in the book on my husband, who wasn't here tonight. So like, and he's like 40, 44. So they work on him. They can work on anyone. So
that's really hopeful, right? Because like when I was reading the Intuit culture and you interview guys, seriously, when you read this book, I had tears in my eyes. There, you were talking to 78-year-olds who had never experienced a word of anger from any parent in their lives or remember one instance.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's almost hard to believe until you experience it. Or they'll remember like one time, like an uncle yelled at them, and it will be like so clear in their minds. Yeah, there's just no yelling. They just see it as incredibly unproductive, which a lot of cultures do, right? That anger and yelling is this very, very unproductive thing. And I think once you make that switch, it's easier to have less because you devalue it and you turn to other responses, just like in the car with your daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
The anger, you realized the anger wasn't going to do any good. So you chose a different response. And I think that's helped me a lot with my anger, is like devaluing it, like being aware that like another response is gonna help the relationship better. So one of the moms kept telling me, it's always about the relationship. Are you helping the relationship? Are you hurting the relationship? Right?
Yes.
and yelling is gonna hurt the relationship, right? In the end, it's gonna, not permanently, but it's definitely not gonna help. So that's what I've been doing with my husband too, is like thinking like, okay, how am I gonna respond? Will this help us or will this hurt us? And so that's been guiding me a lot, and realizing that anger is just not as productive as our culture thinks it is. It really isn't, especially personal, right? Maybe
Yes.
like globally or something, but day to day, your family, the people you live with, it's not productive in many ways.
And, and I call myself a relationship first coach because, for instance, like you and I have never met before tonight. Now we know each other, right? So if you had called me last week and said, hey, I'm coming in, we've never met, can you get me from the airport, which is like 2 hours away? I'd be like, Uber. Now, right? Now, if you're like, will you come get me from the airport? I'll be like, yes. So the request is not different. The relationship is, right? And that's like,
yes,
it is on everything.
Yes. Right.
So I want to, I think towards, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead. I forgot.
So I think the lesson at the end of towards the end of the book was like, it's so bittersweet because you really talk about how you realized after you had your baby, who's now 5, right? That of course you got depressed because we are so isolated. Talk about what you learned about community from staying with the last group of people in Africa.
Yeah. We were with a group of called the Hadzabe in Tanzania, and what struck me with them is how much they all work together. So the camp was about 15 adults, I'd say 15 to 20 adults, and they all had babies and toddlers. The older kids were actually away at school, but at first I couldn't even tell which toddler was with which parents, because the toddlers were so comfortable and interacted so much with every other mom that I didn't know who was who. The babies were easier, but what I quickly realized was these women spend about, 10, 12 hours a day together. So they wake up, they build a fire, they hang out together in the morning, then they go maybe forage for tubers, get some firewood, get some water. I mean, and they do it all together all day long, taking care of each other's kids. And they're very close. And, if a new baby is born, in one of the studies with a different group, they showed that the new baby was given to a different mom every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, a new parent, like a person would come and hold the baby. So what they're called is allo parents, this like other caretakers. So here in the US, daycare providers, nannies, friends, neighbors, grandparents, we have them too. It's just that with the Hadzabe, it's like the children are just as bonded to these people as their parents. And it was just so striking compared to me with a newborn where, Rosie was attached to me, and really to me only for like 6 months. And it was just me and her in this condo by ourselves for 6 months, compared to this baby. And, with the Hadzabe baby, where like that baby is attached to like 5 different people. And the mom has this incredibly dense social network of support. And I always thought I got depressed because there was something wrong with me, but it's like, no, there's not. It is something wrong with what we do when a baby is born and how we isolate the mom or the dad, or the mom and the dad together, right? And it's what I say in the book and describe in the book is there is very good evolutionary evidence that the reason humans are here is because of this allo parenting, and the baby is designed to be parented this way. And we are forcing 1 or 2 people to do this job of like 5.
Yeah. When I coach parents and they whisper to me, I'm so sick of my kid. And I was like, how do you think people did it forever? In these teeny villages in the caves where you'd have babies until you die, like at 15. But you had your aunties, your moms, like your grandmas, everybody together. You were never expected to be alone this much with one other person. Of course you're sick of them.
And the baby's not designed that way. The baby is designed to have, and like Sally said to me, one of the moms in the Arctic said to me, your child is sick of you too. She's like, of course she's grumpy. She's tired of being around you. She's made to be around lots of people, including kids and grandparents, all ages. And so I've started valuing these people in our lives, the neighbors, the friends, the other parents, even my mom, who we started having come out and visit more. And, it's like, I see the value in them, and they're there. We just don't, sometimes I even felt like shame, like, oh, I'm giving, having a nanny or a daycare provider, there's like this shame attached to it. Whereas I've learned to like embrace it and like, this is what good for the baby. This is good for the mom. This is good for the dad. This is the way it's meant to be, this like shared effort. Right.
Yeah. There is a lot of shame. And I keep telling people, just because you may have to pay for some of your village does not make them less of a village.
Exactly.
It doesn't, that daycare and that group that your kid is with 5 days a week with that teacher they love and their little buddies, that's their village.
Yeah. And think about how much love that provider is giving, right? Like how much, it's like, I think, like I say in the book, we just need to value these, every person that's attaching and loving our children. Just we owe so much respect and value to, because those people, it shows like even just one extra adult, like who really shows interest in a child. There's all this data that show it can have a huge impact on a child later in life and their mental health. I mean, I say, like, social support is this like magic to humans. It like helps us not just mentally, but like our hearts and our immune system. And like, it is like just as important as eating well and exercising is having these deep connections to other people. And I think the job of the parent is to help foster them in your kids, right? Like the kid loves this one person. Well, make an effort to stay around with that person and have that person in the child's life if they want to. It's like, because we're not talking about lots of people. We're talking about a few very, very close attached people that the child like has a history with,
Yes. Yes.
We tend to think numbers, but this is like strength, right?
When kids are struggling, when they used to go to school, I would instruct the parents to find one favorite teacher. It didn't even have to be that child's current teacher, and ask that teacher to gather the child in once a day. Like somehow bring them into the nest of safety, emotional safety. Right. And I've never had a teacher deny it. Right. Even though they're like strapped and tired and overworked, like when they're told like Jimmy loves you the most, like, can he stop by at lunch? Yes. Right. And it's just that touch like you're talking about.
Yeah. Or have the parent, what I read in the book is, have the kid make something for that teacher to like, or, to like, Rosie loves making cards. And so it's like, I'll be like, make a card for your favorite teacher, make a thank you, make a Christmas card, make, to build, first of all, you're modeling, respect and value, and you're giving back to this person that has given to the child, right? Or we even make like food for Rosie's old daycare provider, one of her previous ones we've stayed close to, and she's become a good family friend. And, we make her desserts and stuff for the holidays, and we do that together. And I love it. I think it's been wonderful to stay connected to somebody who was given.
Yeah. And, even though we're in a pandemic, as soon as it's over, you and I need to start a movement back to kind of the front of the book. I wrote a chapter for the book that never made it in, which is called Stop It with the Goddamn Birthday Parties. Right.
Oh my God.
And
yes.
Literally, I'm like, why am I buying made in China junk? Because you came to my house and freaking wrecked it. Right. So I grew up, I never had a birthday party with friends. My brother's birthday was around the same, and I had 150 cousins, and that's who was allowed to come. I like finally, like in the end of grade school, when everyone's like, what a loser, you're having a party. I had a party. Right. But it was only family. Every event was only family, whether or not it was cool or what, because that those were our people. And now I've realized, we've gone too far the other way. Everything is child-centered, not about family, about strangers, and very high level. Can you talk about and how that doesn't show up, especially in the Maya culture?
Yeah, and this is something is so strange, Megan, that Western culture has decided that everything needs to be child-centered. That just doesn't really exist. I mean, it's very rare. And the thing is if it's a child-centered activity, the child initiates it, right? The child says, I want to go to this sports. I want to do this. And then the mom finds a way for the child to do it on their own, like kind of trains them to do it on their own, right? So it isn't this parent taking them to the child places. But yeah, these child-centered things don't exist, I think, in any other culture, definitely not throughout history. Instead, the adults go about their business, like in doing productive tasks, hobbies, social tasks, and they let the children tag along, right? So the worlds are merged. There isn't this separation of adult world and child world. And they expect the children to be children, but they don't, there are lines drawn. They have to be respectful, like I say, and helpful. But what ends up happening is that the child learns to work together with the family, to work together. That's where that team comes from with Juanita in the morning, right? Because the child has been around when the mom is doing the chores. The child is around when the dad is working. And they pitch in. The parents ask them to pitch in regularly to help when they can. One study found that parents ask a child to help with the task like 3 times an hour. So it's a little bit here and there. I think what happens when we just have these child-centered activities is we kind of put children in this bubble, this like fantasy bubble.
And then we can't believe they can't believe that they don't do, like, we can't believe that they don't want to do anything. right? So that we make them do nothing, we train them on
Right.
nothing, we don't use their developmental willingness to help and try. And then we're like, what's wrong with you? Why are you lazy? Why are you such a brat? I'm raising a brat.
Exactly. Yeah, we take them from the birthday party in the kitty museum and we come home and we say like, why won't you pick up your shoes? Well, you've been catered to the whole day, like, and treated like a VIP versus somebody who is like a full-fledged working member of the house. Exactly. I noticed that Rosie has like a hangover after these activities. She's horribly defeated.
I call it, and I see it now, especially in my coaching, everyone's tired but wired.
Yes, including the mom.
Yeah, it's like Vegas, right? You're like, this was fun, but I also feel like overstimulated.
Yeah, because it's made for that, right? It's made to like, no more birthday parties. I will not go to, if some other mom wants to come and take her, so be it. But I will not attend one.
And because I never read parenting books anymore and think about my own life. I'm just going to admit that. I just don't. And I was thinking about how I have a crew of friends in DC. I've been there a long time. None of our kids are friends anymore. They all grew up together and we have all our birthday parties together. Like, it's like, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years now of all the same kids, right? And we all just show up and we're like, here comes this family, here comes this, even though it may not even seem to make sense, they're the family, right?
Right.
And I was like, right, that's why I keep living here for this crew. But I think, what shines in your book is not that, all right, take away all the birthday parties. I mean, even though I'm saying it and I do believe it because I hate them, but it's not about take away. It's about literally reframing what's our work and what's their work. It's family work.
Yeah.
It's family life.
Yeah.
It's
that's right. And
it's togetherness.
If I'm working, you're
yeah. It's togetherness.
If I'm working, you're then you're helping.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think what you said earlier is like incredibly insightful. It's finding this middle ground, right? That it's not all one way or all the other way, but it's this combination that I think sometimes Americans, sometimes Westerners have a hard time kind of finding this middle part, so.
Do you think that in your experience, because now like, I want to like go all over the world with you and just like take books and take notes. I'm like, called my husband. I'm like, there's so many cultures. He's like, okay. I'm like, she's the journalist. I'm the parenting expert. It'll be amazing. He's like, don't go around these poor people. So, do you think though that it comes, because something really powerful, and I know like we're running out of time, but guys, I'm telling you, read this book. Something that Michaeleen points out, which is crucially important, is how specious and light the data is for what you think you're doing right.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to talk a little bit because you take the front of the book to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yes. I mean, I would say that 95% of the things that you were doing have no data backing them whatsoever. There's no actual reason for you to be doing them. Like none, I mean, like praise, that is like a huge experiment we're running on our children. And we don't have any clue what's happened, what the effect it is going to be on our kids. We're starting to see it maybe, but no culture throughout history has praised children like we praise them. And yet kids grow up with very good self-esteem, confident, self-sufficient, everything that we want. Everything
resilient.
We think praise is doing.
Right.
Yeah. No, you don't need to praise your child. You really don't. In fact, when I stopped praising Rosie, and I have to say I didn't stop completely because it's very hard, given how baked in it is. But when I cut it down, again, behavior improved enormously because a lot of what she was doing was like attention seeking, which I think came from the praise. There is some evidence that praise also causes competition between siblings, which I think is huge.
Yes.
it even causes competition at work. I noticed somebody gets praised and the other people get pissed off.
So, and I'll just interrupt you and say that the data shows that if you praise a widget maker, so just like, it works. So low cognition kind of don't care.
Oh,
Okay. Anything that involves
interesting.
relationship
Interesting.
or higher cognition or caring, it has the inverse effect. It makes you want to do less. So not only does it not work,
Yes, demotivating.
it's demotivating because there's a natural human inclination to be truly seen. Right?
Yes, yes.
For true accomplishment, for true giving, for true, and just saying like, you set the table, thanks. Not like, ah! Okay, so anyway, you were talking about data, praise doesn't work. What
Yeah.
else?
The talking at the child all the time is and I call it learn-a-palooza. This idea that we need to instruct the child, like we turn every moment into like a lecture, a class lecture. There's actually data like this shows that this actually basically makes the child want to get away from you. Like makes the child want to just stop what they're doing. Like if you're trying to cook with a child and you're like, here's a lecture on fractions, most children will just be like, get me away from this. Because children actually are made to learn through watching and pitching in. And if they have a question, they will ask you. And it is you can be responsive. You don't have to be like a teacher. And in fact, it's micromanaging, right? It cuts out their ability to learn and be in like what we want. We want independence. Well, then stop micromanaging. Stop telling them what to do at every moment. So this is like, you can just be with the child. And actually it will really, really beneficial if you just are with with your child instead of talking. And in fact, that whole word gap thing, I don't know, there's a lot of data on that it's not true. Because I mean, pediatricians tell you, right, to talk to the child so they learn to speak. But in every culture around the world, parents don't talk to their children like that, and every kid learns to speak very well.
And
so,
every culture almost does the same thing, which is facial, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of like
yes,
mirror neuron work, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of cultures,
Right.
to a baby in a slightly higher voice.
Yeah.
Do sweet, right? Nobody
Right.
taught anybody that. Nobody taught us that, right?
Right.
It just happens, and then somewhere along the line, I call it these liminal moments of where we get insecure because everybody does, and because we do not have scaffolded support and long-standing examples right there next to us, so strong that we turn to people that we don't know with theories that don't work and listen to them instead. And we turn away from our own intuition and plow forward with insanity.
Well, we've lost the teachers, right? And when the extended family was shattered and created the nuclear family, we lost all of our teachers. We lost the grandma, we lost the aunt, and we're just kind of stuck now with YouTube and parenting books. And yeah, a lot of it is wrong.
Like the blue book.
Yes, exactly.
All right, I'm aware of the time. Are there any questions for us, or are we just going to keep babbling on?
Hey, ladies, looks like there are not any questions tonight.
Good. I'm going to then just end this with, I legitimately like cried at parts because there was, in American culture, especially when you deal with parenting or anything that goes towards psychology, we really talk about behavioralism, and we don't talk about love, because love is so hard to measure, right?
Right.
And this book was so many different ways that the love was clear. and clearly expressed in different ways. So, easy question, but how would you say that each culture kind of expressed and the children felt the love?
I think with the Maya, what I saw was the parents accepting the child's contribution to a task.
Mm.
Yeah, like the little girl made a tortilla and it wasn't quite perfect. The mom didn't go in and try to take her hand and try to make it perfect or tell her what to do. She accepted the tortilla and kind of fixed it a little bit. And that with me and Rosie has been huge, that I accept what she gives me. Like a lot of times she's giving me things and trying to contribute, and I'm so focused on it being perfect or she's not doing what I want that I don't see and accept her contribution. And once I started doing that, our relationship really bloomed, like really bloomed.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to like slow down and really pay attention to her and be like, and also give her the benefit of the doubt that she's trying to help. She's trying to contribute. And I just need to see it.
Right.
I mean, the Inuit are just, they just love children so much. There's so many things. But I say that, they have this wonderful kiss. They have this wonderful kiss where they
the nose on the cheek.
Yeah, on the cheek, and you smell it, and they do it like on one side and then they do it on the other side. And one of the moms loved these little girls, these little children so much, she would just scream out like, I love her. I love her. I mean, they really genuinely love children. We kind of think little children are pain in the butts, but they really love kids. And I realized that the older kids watching this, that's how they learn to love the younger ones.
Right.
Yeah. Because the parent is saying, I love them. Their parent isn't saying, oh, you're a pain in the butt. The parent is saying, I love little kids. And the Hadzabe love. Oh, this reminds me. So the Hadzabe love fires, and they have wonderful fires in the morning and they have a fire at night. And what an amazing way to live. It's just so wonderful. And one day I saw this dad and this little 5-year-old sit by the fire for like 2 hours, Megan, and basically nothing. There was no entertainment. There was nothing. They just sat there together and they didn't argue. And I think they were talking some, but it was just this like, I realized like, have I ever not argued with Rosie for 2 hours? Like, could I do that? It was just, they just sat there next to each other and enjoyed talk about mindfulness, right? Like they just enjoyed the moment. And it made me realize how, like you say, like words and commands just generate conflict. And if we can just learn to be together, peacefully coexist, that's really that togetherness, right?
Yeah. And that I think for American parents, we just don't have to work so hard.
Yes. You can just stop. You can just stop talking, instructing, commanding.
Pushing. Yeah,
pushing and pulling, right? That minimal interference, just the child will get there. The child will get there. Children do not need to do things at age 6. Right? They don't.
I'm saying this literally as I just texted my 14-year-old, like, I found an art camp, you have to go, send me 3 submissions of your art. And she's like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, yeah, but so I do. Yeah, we talk a lot about intention versus impact, right?
It's true.
So
It's
I have good intentions. My
takes
impact,
time.
not so much. So just to close it out and to value your time, this book is chock full, you guys, of you're just going to feel very understood when you read it. And what's very important is that there are doable things for right now in our American culture. And you can change. You don't have to like keep doing what everyone's doing. And it can be very subtle and small and quiet. It doesn't have to be big things. Does not.
Yeah.
And yes, you may want to move to these places, but let's like keep it going here in America because we can change it here.
They won't have us. They will not have us. We are too much.
Yes, we are too much. But thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Oh, thank you so much, Megan. And I really appreciate it. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody go get the book and then go buy mine. And then
Thank
you
you
have
both.
them sit next to
Let's
each
be
other.
blue.
The blue books. That's all
The
you
blue
need.
book. The blue parenting.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
Megan. Thank you, Michaeleen. Thank you, everyone who tuned in tonight. You can get Michaeleen's book, Hunt, Gather, Parent at greenapplebooks.com or in store.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Have a good
Bye.
night.
Bye.
Good night.